It's late, so we should begin straight away. Today's daf is daf nun aleph, but we'll begin from nun beis, the two dots, which is about 10 lines on the bottom of the page. A boyer has to be 10 tefachim deep before it has the capacity to kill an animal or something. If it does, you're responsible. If the boyer is 9 tefachim deep and the animal dies, you're not responsible. But if the animal is wounded, then you are. If the animal is wounded 11, 12 tefachim, of course you're responsible. So the Gemara says, Tanah we learned. This is about 8 lines on the bottom of the page. If, for example, the boy was less than 10 tefachim deep, a cow, an ox, or a donkey fell inside, the mace, and it died, potter, you are potter. You are potter. Why? Because it was less than 10 tefachim. It shouldn't have died. If it died, obviously the animal had its own issues. But the mhuzik boy, if it got damaged, chayiv, then you are chayiv. What about if nafal le mes potter? The more I ask a question. Now, let's understand. It says that if an animal fell down and died in 9 tefachim deep, it's potter. My time, but why? Now remember, we have an argument between Rav and Shmuel. Rav says that everyone agrees a boyer is only a cause. You made a hole in the ground, somebody falls in, you didn't kill them, they came to there and they fell in, so you only caused their death or their harm, their damage. But the Torah says you have to pay. For what? According to Rav, you only pay for the stale ear that caused the death. We say that the impact itself, you didn't create anything. The rocks were there before, the sand was there before. What did you create? Nothing. It's only the stale ear that you created, and that's what you're paying for, havola. And Shmuel says you're paying for havola or chabota, whichever one it is, the impact or the stale ear. For example, the bird is full of cotton, or there was a buffer there, but you still died because of the stale ear, so he holds you responsible for both. So now we're showing less than 10 tefachim. The animal does not, and it dies, you're not responsible, which means l'chayda that there's no impact if it's less than 10 tefachim. My time, Alama should let be chavota. Doesn't, because why should there be a difference between 9 and 10 tefachim? It's the impact. But if it's stale there, what's the difference? How deep it is? So you're no, should less be avola. Also, when it comes to foul air, it depends how deep it is. The deeper it is, the more foul the air is. If you're telling me, so more understood right now, there's no stale air if it's less than 10 tefachim. So if the animal got damaged, and according to Rav, as difficult as it is to understand, if the animal breaks its leg, then you're not paying because of the impact, but we're saying that the foul air there somehow or another exacerbated the damage of the broken foreleg, and that's what you're paying for. But now the more understood, there is no foul ear less than 10 tefachim. So why are you paying for damages at all? There is no havola, and the impact you don't pay for according to Rav. Amri, so we explain, ain't havola, there are grades of foul ear. So it's not sufficient foul ear lemisa to kill the animal. So if you kill an animal 9 tefachim deep, you don't have to pay. But the yesh havola lezikin. But there is enough foul ear there to cause damage, and therefore you're responsible for damaging. So now the Gemara brings a story, an incident. The din is that if you have there's 18 different forms of treifa in an animal, which means the animal is going to die. And if the animal falls down, there's a possibility that it became treif, that the limbs moved about. So there are 2 possible tests. One is you wait 24 hours. If the animal is still all right, no problem. Another one is you have it walking straight away. There is a shchit in Israel that is so machmir that every chicken, before they shecht it, they make it walk 4 amos to make sure that it's all right, which obviously means you cannot do too many, too many chickens, but that's what they do. So what happened here was that this person's animal fell into an irrigation canal. So it's like this. I would tell you there was this cow. Nafal that fell in Larissa, the Daloy, an irrigation canal. A canal which is in the Gemara is known as Amas Hamayim. It's called an amas from the word amma, which means an amma, 6 tefachim, because the depth and the width is 6 tefachim. So the water was 6 tefachim deep. Shachte Mare, so the owner of the animal didn't want, the scared, maybe became treif, so he jumped in and straight away shechted it. Tarfed Rav Nachman, when Rav Nachman was asked about this animal, he said it's treif, because we didn't go through either one of the 2 tests. He shechted it straight away. We don't know if it's still a healthy animal or not. And Rav Nachman said, by not going to a Rav and jumping in instead, thinking that you can salvage the situation, you made it worse. You were taking a kav of flour, a certain measure of flour. But also told me that you would have gone to the yeshiva, speak to the rabbanim there. They would have told you, if you waited 24 hours, there's a possibility like to be kosher. And like after they told you would not have forfeited or lost your animal, the Bava Kama Daf that was worth a lot more than this investment of one kav of flour. Anyway, he ruled that it's treif. Why? Because the impact made it treif. The problem that we have now is that the depth is only 6 tvachim. Treif means an animal is going to die. The depth is only 6 tvachim, but we just said that an animal doesn't die less than 10 tvachim. So where's the treif come in? Says the Gemara, Alma Kasava must be Rav Nachman agrees with what we learned before that yes, chabota bepachas masada, that an animal can yes have an impact. It can die less than 10 tvachim. Eisavei Rav Nachman asked Rav Nachman a question, or it can have the impact. So Nachman asked, Eisvei Rav Nachman. So Rav asked Rav Nachman a question. It says in our Mishnah, less than 10 tvachim deep enough for an ox or a donkey fell in. The mason died. Potter, you are potter. My time, but why you potter? Because obviously less than 10 tvachim, no impact. There's no impact. So why are you making the animal treif? So he said no. He said you misunderstood. Of course, there's an impact, and therefore the animals treif even 5 tvachim. But we don't charge you, we don't hold you responsible for killing an animal because of the impact. I hold like Rav that we charge you for the stale ear. So therefore, less than 10 tvachim, the ear is not stale enough to kill. So he said, "Loi on top of the nunal, loi mishum less bahavola." There's no foul ear there. So Gemara said, Gemara understood. In absolute terms, there's no foul ear. If the animal got hurt, there's no foul ear. On Malay, he said to him, you missed the point. Ain hevel misa, but the yesh hevel zikin. There are grades of foul ear, not insufficient amount of foul ear to kill an animal, but there's enough to wound an animal, harm an animal, and damage an animal. And I hold like Rav. Okay, Angel has a question. Beis haskil. When somebody is mechal Shabbos and there were 2 witnesses, so the punishment is stoning. So they had a special house next to the bezin, and this house has 2 stories high, and they brought him on the 3rd story, and they pushed him off there, and then if it didn't die, they threw rocks at him. Beis haskila is 2 stories high, but Tanya Allah, if you add his height, how do you count shalosh? It's actually 3 stories high. Now the question is, if you're telling me that less than 10 tvachim is very an impact from Nachman ruled animals treif, and we're going to, as Tesha says, we're going to compare a person's becoming treif to an animal. So why do you have to have 3 stories high? Even 6 tvachim, 1 story high, plenty. These are not the yes chabot and you. That's why there's impact less than 10 tvachim. Why do you have to go to that extent? Why 3 stories? The Gemara asked back. Gemara retorts. So what is it? 10 tvachim. So still the same question applies. Why 3 stories? Well, time make navid asara. Just make 10 tvachim. Eli, you know why we make 3 stories high? The famous Rab Nachman, the Amar Rab Nachman, Amar Rab Ravu, Amar Kra. The pasuk says, "V'hafta l'reacha kamocha." Love your friend like yourself. Beror la misa yafa. You want the person to die as quickly as possible, as painlessly as possible. You throw him off the roof. Taisus and Sanhedrin asks a question. He says he doesn't understand. Where does v'hafta l'reacha kamocha come in when you're about to kill somebody? So he says over there an answer which is quite amazing, and Ramban and Chumash said the same thing. Teza says it is impossible to love someone else like yourself, naturally and halachically. Naturally, because you love yourself more than anyone else, and halachically, chayecha kaidmin, you come first. So what do we have to? So Teza says the only time you can genuinely love someone else as like yourself, if the person's about to die, you have to live together for 5 minutes. Okay, for 5 minutes you can have real Ahavas Yisrael, but beyond that, it's impossible. It's an amazing acknowledgement. Without Tanya in Periglam Bay is explaining how you can have true Ahavas Yisrael by the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael is to understand that every person is primarily a neshama, and all the neshamas are really part of each other because they're all part of Hashem. And the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael is to understand that who are we? We are made up of neshamas. Then therefore it's possible to love each other because you're actually loving yourself. We're all part of each other. But that is what Chassidus introduced. But Tosfos and the Ramban say it's a mitzvah which is impossible to keep properly. Anyway, so Gemara says here that it has 10 tvachim definitely what do you call it? even less than 10 tvachim, according to Nachman, has an impact. But here is we make your we have 3 stories, so you should die quickly. Says the Gemara, if you want to die quickly, make it 10 stories. As the Gemara, what it says the Gemara, make it higher. So obviously they were able to make more than 3 stories in those days. Says the Gemara, should the novel if you go too high and the body falls down, it breaks apart, and it's embarrassing. It's not dignified. H.L. asked another question. We have a rule. The Torah says in Parshas Shoftim that if you have a roof, you have to put a mark. If you have a house with a roof on top of it, you have to make a mica fence, because you have to make sure that nobody gets hurt, nobody falls off your roof. So the Gemara says an interesting thing. What happens if you have a street that's higher than the house? Is there a mitzvah or is there a chiyuv to put a fence on the street? So the Gemara says no. It's only from the house to the street, not from the street to the house. The pasuk says, Esau asked a question. It says, "Ki yipul hanoiful min menu." If somebody falls from the house. So we dash min menu. If you fall from the house to the street, you have a chiyuv to put a fence. Not if you fall from the street into your house. How does that work? Kate said, how does that work? If this public street was raised above your house, 10 tfachim, and you fall off the street into the house, potter, you are potter, obviously, but so is the street. Everybody's potter. There's nobody here you can hold responsible. If your house is below the street by 10 tfachim, sorry, the other way around. If the street is below your house 10 tfachim, and somebody falls off your roof onto the street 10 tfachim and gets killed or gets harmed, chayiv, you are chayiv. You're chayiv. Now, Nachman said that an animal fell 6 tfachim. It already had an impact and it killed the animal. Maybe so by a person, the same thing. So why do you tell me that the roof has to be 10 tfachim raised above the street around? It should be 6 tfachim is enough. He said, you missed the point. The impact happens 6 tvachim, but the mic is only around the house. What constitutes a house? At certain dimensions, and that is has to be 10 tvachim high. Otherwise, you can't put your head in there. The problem there is it's not a house. Says if so, that's a very simple question. If outside, even now, okay, you tell me what the house is 10 tfachim high from the outside, but the house is the inside. You live inside the house, and you have a ceiling, you have cement. So if the outside is 10, inside would be 9 or 8. Why do you need a mic? Subtract, reduce, take off the ceiling and the cement. From inside, you don't have 10 tfachim. You know when you need a mic, if you have 10 tfachim, the outside is 10. If inside is 10, you dug a little bit below the surface of the ground, so now you have 10 tfachim inside the house. Says the Gemara, or you etch out a hole in the ceiling. So what do you need 10 tfachim at all outside? You can have 6 tfachim outside and dig a cellar. If you're saying that the house is raised 6 tfachim, let's say, or 5 tfachim above the ground, and you fall down, it can kill you and cause you damage. So then why do you need the mica to be 10 tfachim raised above the ground? You have a mica 6 tfachim above the ground, and the house will be 10 tfachim because you dug underneath, under the surface of the ground. You're going to chok batzvah, you dug deeper. So you says, you're right, take it back. There is no impact for death below 10 tvachim. No, so how come by the animal he made a treif when the animal itself was only fell into the water that was 6 tvachim deep? So he says, a high time, you know what, Nachman? Somebody hold mekrisa the toida la'ara from the stomach. Remember, the animal's walking on its legs. The stomach is raised above the ground. From the stomach to the ground is a minimum of 4 tvachim. Amas hamayim is 6 tvachim deep. You combine the 4 tvachim that the stomach is raised above the ground and the 6 tvachim of the water together is 10 tvachim. So the animal actually fell 10 tvachim, and that's why Rab Nachman ruled that the animal is treif, because it is 10 tvachim. Because he said Mekisha Toilada Kamababa is 4 tvachim. Adi said the actual water Kamabashisa 6 tvachim. Between the two, you have 10. When it falls, the impact is 10 tvachim. Ela Masnisim Diktonis. Our Mishnah says Ma boy Shu Kedei Lahamis Yutvachim. Our Mishnah says that a boy needs 10 tvachim af kol. She yesh boy Kedei Laham Yutvachim. L'chayda b'shisanam esagi. According to you, forget the case of the water. A normal case, an animal walking down the street and falls into a boy. Why do you need a boy to be 10 tefachim deep? The boy should be only 6 tefachim deep. The animal is 4 tefachim raised above the ground. So when it falls in, it's 10 tefachim in total. Why 10 tefachim? 6 tefachim is enough. How many we say? Masnisin din gadol lebor. You're right. It is enough. Our mission is talking about a case where the animal is lying next to the boyer, and then it topples over, falls into the boyer. In that case, there, the boyer is only 6 tefachim. It won't be responsible because the animal wasn't standing on his feet. Mishnah. We have a boyer of 2 partners. Overall, the first partner goes by the lake Yisrael. It didn't cover the 2 partners in a boyer. We'll soon see how that's possible. The 2 partners in the boyer, and one guy then used the boyer to draw water, and then he didn't cover it. And then we'll see he invited the second guy to come over. And the lake Yisrael didn't cover it. But Hasheni, to the second guy who took over, lake didn't cover it either. Hasheni Chai. We're going to hold responsible only the second guy. We don't say, oh, the first guy, you were there first and you removed the lid, so you're responsible. No. When he gave over the second guy, it's as if he said to the second guy, you're taking over responsibility now. Make sure you cover it. So the second guy is totally responsible. So the first thing I want to know is, how is it possible to have a boyer of partners? So to quickly remind you, we had a machlekes of Shmuel Rabbi Akiva, and we had a machlekes Rabbi Yosef how to understand it. So Rabbi understood. Everyone agrees that if you dug a hole in a public place, everyone agrees that you are responsible, because it says kriya psicha, for ma'aseh kriya, just for the digging itself. Their argument is if it's in a private place. According to Rabbi Akiva, if you dug a hole in your boyer, and then you gave everyone access, you opened up the area around the boyer, abutting the boyer, says it's public access, but the boyer, you retained ownership. So Rabbi Akiva says, Baal haboyer yishalom, it's your possession, you're responsible. And Rabbi Shmuel says, no, it has to be hefker. If it's mine, they shouldn't have come here, they're trespassing, I'm not responsible. So according to Rabbi Akiva, he holds that you could have possession of a boyer. According to, so it's possible to have a boyer of 2 shutfin. If 2 people own the property together, but if it's in the Shus Rabim, it's impossible. And according to Rabbi Yosef, everyone agrees that in the Shus Rabim, everyone agrees that in the Shus Yachid you are responsible. They're arguing about a Shus Rabim. That's what they're arguing in. In the Shus Rabim, whether you're responsible or not, whether we say that since you have no ownership, you're not responsible as a Bekiva, or you are. So the more that's like this. Amri, the Mishnah says you have a boyer of 2 partners. Tell me, how can you have 2 partners? That makes sense. He's like Rabbi Akiva. If you hold like Rabba's version of Rabbi Akiva, that you own the boy, we find it in they both own the property together. They own the pit together. And then Vivkira the Shusan, they made Hefker all around. Well, Vivkira boy, but they make Hefker the boy. Fine. But Eli is fidel boy if you hold like Rabbi Shmuel, that a boy in your private property is potter, because who asked you to trespass and come onto my boy? Then how can you ever find the chayiv aleb b'shus rabim? The only time your chayiv boyer is in the shus rabim. But in the shus rabim, boyer shushnei shufnei mishkachla, in a public place. What do you mean partners? Nobody owns it. It's a public place. So one answers, maybe either shav or shliach. Maybe they both together appointed a shliach and said, build us a boyer. They said, Zil Korilan, go dig a hole. But also Korilan, he dug it. Says you want to know it isn't, because ain't shlich v'aveda. They can say, we never anticipated that you were going to listen to us, because Hashem said you're not allowed to dig a hole. It's an Avera, and you're not allowed to do that. Now, what exactly is the Avera is a big argument. Some say the Avera is lifnei iver lesit michshel, and therefore it's only limited to making a boyer. If I break your window, did I do an Avera? I have to pay for the window, obviously. But did I commit a sin? What sin did I commit? So if you learn over here that Avera is lifnei iver lesit michshel, don't place a stumbling block before a blind person, then if I break your window, there's no lifnei iver. Others, the Rameh says, because you're breaching Avas Yisrael. If it's because you're breaching Avas Yisrael, then all Mazikim is an Avera. You're breaching Avas Yisrael. So others say stealing. So it can't be that. Then Gemara continues. One guy dug 5 tefachim, then the next guy came along and dug 5 tefachim. Whatever the first guy did is gone because the second guy took over. So how can you have 2? So Gemara says, now we're going to learn there's an argument between Rebbe and the Chachamim. A very interesting argument. According to Rebbe, if one guy dug a hole and another guy came and added to it, sometimes they're both responsible. Sometimes the first person disappears and the second one takes over. And how does that work? If the first person dug only 9 tefachim, which means it can only cause damage, the second person came along and added another tefach, made it 10 tefachim deep. Now it can kill. So the second person transformed this boy from a place that causes damage to a place that actually kills. So the second person took over ownership. No shutras. But even then, if the animal fell in 10 tfachim deep and he got hurt, the first person did most of the hurting because he made the first 9 tfachim, which caused most of the damage. So therefore, they're still partners. That's Rebbe. The Chachamim say if a second person comes in, I don't care if it's 8 tfachim out of 1 tefach or he turns it into a place for killing animals, the second guy takes over complete ownership, and the first guy is gone. There's no partners. So I can find a scenario where they're partners. In a case where one guy made 9 tefach, the other guy made a 10 tefach, but the animal only got damaged. Okay, so then they're both partners. But according to Rebbe, in the case where the animal died, what do you have? And the Mishnah says, in all cases. All the Rabbanan who hold that they're never partners. The second guy always takes over. How do you find partners? They both went and they dug the last kernel of sand. Together they picked it up. And made it 10 tefachim deep. So now they were partners in turning this hole into a place for killing animals. So I'm going to ask quickly, my Rebbe, my Rabbanan. What's this Rebbe and Rabbanan? The time we learned. One guy came along, dug a hole 9 tefachim deep. Another guy came in the hole, made a 10th. The guy who made the 10th is chayiv. Why? Because he took over. He made another. He chayiv, and if an animal dies, he's chayiv. If an animal got damaged, he's chayiv as well. The first guy's gone. Rebbe says, if the animal died, yes, the second guy's responsible. But if the animal got hurt, then both of them, the guy did 9, the guy did 10, are both partners. My time to the bottom. What's the logic of bottom? Why should only the second guy be responsible? If the animal was damaged, the first guy also committed most of the damage. 9 tefachim of that hole belongs to the first guy. Because I'm a crow. It said the pasuk, if you open a hole in the street or you dug a hole, if you're going to hold me responsible just for removing the lid. If I dug the entire hole, won't you hold me surely responsible? I tell you, if one guy dug part of it, another guy came along and did the rest, the second guy is responsible. So the first guy disappears. The Rebbe says, no, you can't use the pasuk for that. We need the pasuk I've learned before to teach you that if you dig a hole in a public place, there's no ownership, that it's the act of digging that makes you responsible. Rabbanan says, in fact, Rabbanan also use the pasuk for that. You know why the Rabbanan say that only one person is responsible? Because Amakra says the pasuk, if a man digs a hole, singular, only if one person digs a hole, but not two. The Rebbe says, you know why you need ish? If your animal goes and digs a hole in the ground and somebody falls in, you're not responsible because ish boy. Only if a person digs a hole, not if an animal. But I tell you, it says twice. Ish boy. It says twice. Want to teach you each did. But Rebbe, no, I did the kosabai. It was being poetic. The Torah started isha or isha. So Rabban holds only one person responsible, and Rebbe holds they're both responsible for damages. Says the Gemara, okay, but how do you, according to Rabban, hold that only one person responsible? How do you know it's the second guy? Maybe it's the first guy, the one who started digging the hole in the first place. Or maybe it's the first guy. Says the Gemara, you can't think that. The pasuk says that you should pay, the owner of the boy should pay. But the carcass belongs to that person. And what do you mean the carcass belongs to that person? So, and it says at the same time that the person has to pay. So obviously, whoever caused the death, the final blow, is the one who's paying. Who do you call the misa? The one who killed the animal. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? But we need the pasuk v'hamesi like another drasha altogether, and that is as follows. We know that if your animal strikes down an animal from Hegdish, you're exempt because it says shoyde eyu, your friend's animal. What about an animal that was redeemed from Hegdish? It had a flaw, it had a defect, it had a mum, sharp psule hamikdashim, and it's a defect. The thing is, you can keep it, but it's very limited what you could do with it. You cannot take the carcass and give it to your animal to feed. You can only eat it. You cannot share the wool. Tizbach giza, and so on and so forth. So, because the pasuk are messy Eloi, that when do we say that you have to pay for damaging someone else's animal? That if the person can keep the animal, do with it whatever they want. But over here they cannot keep the animal, do whatever they want. So therefore, you don't have to pay, even though it doesn't belong to Hegdish anymore. It is shor de'eya, but you don't have to pay. So Gemara says, so we need, the most question is, what are you telling a messy Eloi teaches you? That the one who killed it is the one who pays. We need it for another drasha. An animal with a defect, only if you have full control. So we answer, you're right. Of the lab and mainly, you're right. That's what the pasuk is for. But the fact is, the Torah then says pay, which who's paying? That person who gets to keep the carcass. Is lab and mainly shamanei automatically from made about who doesn't misaskin, and the one who kills is the one who pays. What have we learned? We have two brises that seem to contradict each other. One brisa says echad hachayfer bar asara. One guy came along and dug a 10 tefachim bar, which means ready to kill. So no 9 tefachim, 10 tefachim. Then another person came along, the hishlim lechav, dug another 10 tefachim. Now another full size boy that's ready to kill, but now it's 20 tefachim deep. So the din is kul chayavin. They're all partners now, and they're all chayiv. Sounds like Rebbe that they all become partners. Each one dug enough to kill. Each one separately dug a 10 tefachim, so they all dug a boy that can kill. And when I mean, ask a question, another bride says, if one guy dug a 10 tefachim bar, enough to kill, another guy came along and put plaster on the outside, he made it much narrower. So he we'll see what that did. He's an achron chayv. Some guys chayv because by making narrower, the ear is more stale. When it's a very wide, you were asking on Friday about what happens to a very wide hole. If the hole is very wide, we say, and we'll see later that if the hole is very wide, we say the ear circulates, there's no problem anymore of stale air. But you made it narrower by filling it with plaster. Says the Gemara, but here it says the first guy did 10 tefachim, and now he's scot-free. He's out of the picture. Lema, ha Rebbe, ha Rabbanan. The first bride says Rebbe, they all become partners. And this is the Rabbanan, that even though each, the first guy dug a 10 tefach enough to kill, nevertheless, they're not partners. The second guy took over. So the Gemara Amar Azvid, I can learn either it's like the Rabbanan or like the Rebbe. It follows. How about Rabbanan? I can say that both brides are the Rabbanan. The second bride is clear because the second bride says the second guy takes over. But the first bride says that you combine the 10, the 20, and the 30. But according to the Rabbanan, you don't combine. No. When do the Rabbanan say you don't combine if the first guy did 9 tefachim, not enough to kill, and the second guy did 10 tefachim? So even though the animal got damaged, this guy who's made 10 tefachim transformed the boyer into a whole different kind of a boyer, and therefore he takes over. But over here, the first guy also dug 10 tefachim, enough to kill. And the second guy dug 10 tefachim. Because they all were on par, they all did the same thing, they can combine. The first guy only did 9 tefachim. I feel at bottom by the Kulochai. So when I ask a question. So in the case over there, the first guy did 10 tefachim, enough to kill. The second guy came along and added plaster. So why don't they combine? The Ka'avi Kamashim Misa did enough to kill him. Tony Achlan Chayiv, the second guy's Chayiv. How many we say? So Gemara says back, you know what we're talking about over there? The first guy, because he made it so wide, there was not enough foul air to kill. So in fact, he wouldn't have been responsible for killing. The second guy, by putting the plaster, narrowed the pit, so now the air is stale. So therefore, again, the Rabbanan say you don't combine, because one guy did it only for damages. The second guy was for Misa. So the second guy took over. He added Hevel Misa. That's one answer. Ikidam, another answer. I'm going to read. Everything is Rebbe. Rebbe holds that that we do combine. If one guy did 9 tefachim, the other guy did another tefach 10, and the animal got damaged, we combine the two. So we can understand the first brisa. Each one did the same thing. You did 10 tefachim, 10 tefachim, you combine the two. But the second brisa, why does the brisa say that the first guy did 10 tefachim and the second guy did you should combine the two? The first guy also did some damage. Even if it's wide, so it doesn't kill, but it causes damage. So why don't they combine in a case of damaging? It makes sense when they all combine. The first brisa. The second brisa, it says only the second is chayiv. You know why? He's talking about a case. There was nothing. There was no damage caused at all because it was so wide. The trench, whatever it was so wide that the air didn't circulate. It would have circulated so well that it wouldn't cause even damage. So the first guy did nothing, and the second guy did everything. That's why the second guy is chayiv, and there's no shut for sale. What happens in Niach Even al Pei Boyer? Instead of digging another tefach in the boyer, the boyer was 9 tefachim deep. Comes along the second guy, but instead of digging another tefach, he put some rocks around the boyer. So now if somebody stands on the rock, you fall in, it's 10 tefachim deep. So he says, Niach Even al Pei Boyer, Vishlim Lasara, now it's 10 tefachim deep. Bonu l'machlekes Rebbe v'Rabban. That's the argument. According to Rebbe, the two, and let's say he got damaged. According to, because a person you don't pay for if he whatever it is, or let's say, or the animal got damaged. So according to Rebbe, the guy who did 9 tefachim combines with the guy who did 10 tefachim, and you pay for the damage. According to Rabbanan, they don't combine. The guy who did 10 tefachim takes over. Talking about Pshita. I mean, what are you saying different than what we learned before? So you want to know, interesting. We're following now Rab, who says that it's a stay layer, or even Shmuel, but it's full of cotton, so therefore it's the stay layer that kills, not the impact. There's an impact. Navas. I would have thought Lamatahu the Havoladei Kotle. I would have thought if the guy dug another tefach by unearthing there another tefach, he exposed more stay layer and more foul layer, and therefore we hold him responsible as well. Avalamayla, when you added stones, that top tefach doesn't have any foul layer in there at all, no stay layer there at all. So therefore, maybe the guy who did it, put the rocks on top, shouldn't be responsible at all. Definitely, it wasn't the stay layer that he added that contributed to his death. Maybe he shouldn't be responsible. It makes no difference where he puts that additional tefach. Now that a person falls 10 tefachim, you're responsible. That's another interesting question. One guy did 9 tefachim, enough to do damage. Another guy came along and dug out another tefach. Okay, enough to kill. And then he went and he placed the sand back and covered that one tefach. So now it's back to its original form. Do we say in this case, since it's back its original form, it reverts back to the original person and that guy's responsible? The second person took away whatever he did? Or do we say the moment he dug that extra tefach, he took over ownership? And even though he filled that one tefach, he's still responsible now for the other 9 tefachim. It doesn't revert back. Tom tefach. He covered, he opened the tefach and then he covered it. Or sila kavanah, he put stones and then he took away his stones. Mao, what's it in there? Do we say, my the other chocolate, whatever he contributed, he took away, so he's gone back to the first guy. The moment he put the rocks there, or the moment he dug out, it became his. Putting the sand back, it doesn't help because there's 9 more tefachim that he has to cover. Teiku. Amar Bava Kama Daf, boil shmeina. If you have a boy that's 8 tefachim deep, and we said before, it doesn't kill. But umehen shnei tefachim mayim, the last 2 tefachim of that 8 tefachim is water. And water in the pit is usually foul, and it creates even more foul air. So he's chayiv. Is only 2 tefachim. It's only 8 tefachim deep. And the last 2 tefachim is water, because kol tefach demaya kitrei de yabasha. So the last 2, so there really is only 6 tefachim of air, and then you have 2 tefachim of water, but each tefach of water is treated as if it's 2 tefachim of air, because the water is terrible, air is worse. And so therefore 2 tefachim is equal to 4 tefachim, that makes a total of 10. We ask now questions. What happens if you have a boiler tisha, you have a boiler that's 9 tefachim deep, but you only have 1 tefach of water? Do we still apply the rule that 1 tefach of water is equal to 2, and therefore it's 10? Or do we say because it's so shallow, the water it's just a tefach, and therefore it's a total of 9, and the animal gets killed, the guy's not responsible. There's so little water there, less bahavala, doesn't really generate that foul layer. Because it's even deeper, is behavala. Even though it's only 1 tefach of water, but now you're in the 9th tefach line, it's worse. What about bar shiva? The entire bar is 7 tefachim, mehen shloisha tefachim, 3 tefachim of water. So you have 4 tefachim of air, 3 tefachim of water, and if each tefach is equivalent of 2 tefachim, we have a total of 10. Now, we say, keeping in the fisher mind, there's so much water that's even worse. For sure, in this case, you're responsible. Because the air itself is only 4 tefachim, and even with the water, it's only 7 tefachim deep, maybe less bahavala, doesn't have that foul layer. Teiku. What happens in chiva mao? What happens? There's a hole, and I didn't dig any deeper, but I just made it wider, which means that it's encroaching more and more into the public space, into Shusharabim. Amalei said to him, give the guy a credit. Because he made the much wider. Remember, the rule will be, as we'll see, that the depth and the width have to be similar in order to say that the air is foul. But here, by him making it wider, the air is no longer foul. So he asked him back. Rav Shiza asked Rabba, Adrabba, by making it wider, you made it possible for more people walking in other parts of the street. If it was narrow and I'm walking on that side of the street, I wouldn't be hurt. But now that you widen the hole all the way across, all these people get hurt. Ravashi said that next, now let's see. If what caused them to die was the foul air, then hare miyat havala. Well, he should get credit. The second guy did nothing wrong with havala; he made it less. If it was the impact that killed him, now I hold like Shmuel, the impact is also responsible. Well, you made it more possible that he should be hurt when he falls in the boat because you widened it. Taisus describes this piece of Gemara. I'll just quote his Taisus. Harbe hu tema. You don't find that expression of Taisus. Usually tema. I don't understand the Gemara. Harbe hu tema. The Gemara is perplexing. Because what do you mean if he died because of staylia? But the fact is, by me making the hole wider, if I wouldn't have made it wider, the animal wouldn't have fallen. Now that I made it wider, the animal fell in. What do you mean I'm not responsible? Of course I'm responsible. Even if I didn't add the staylia, I'm the one who made the hole, brought the hole to the cow so it fall in. He says he doesn't. Harbu tema. And then the Gemara says, Rashi says another answer. Let's see which side of the boat he fell in. If he fell in the side that you added on, what's clear then? You're the one who made it happen. But the immediate Gisla, it fell on the other side, so the fact that you widened it had no bearing on what happened, then you should get credit because you reduced the stay layer and you shouldn't have to pay. Each one we learned. But if you have a pit, if you have a pit with the depth and the width are the same. Rabba Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi both say, Mashmei Rabbi Bar Chana, name Rabbi Chana. Dama Mashmei Rabbi Money, name Rabbi Money. And there's an argument. Chadama lo oilam yesh bo hevel. There is stale here. Achi hey rechava yes. If they're equal, the width and the depth, if the depth and the width are equal, it's stale here. The only time it's not stale here is if the width is wider than the depth. And the Chadam, no one says no. Lo oilam ein bo hevel achi em yes rechava. He said that no, if they're exactly the same, there's no stale here. The only time there is stale here is if it's deeper than wide. Okay, then the Mishnah says, overall, like you say, the first guy went by, didn't cover it, and the second guy then is responsible. And the question is, what happened? What exactly did the first guy do that he's no longer responsible? He opened up the lid and he took water, and then the second guy came along. We say he's no longer responsible. Why not? When is he? We say the second guy, you're now totally responsible. The Gemara explains, again. The moment he says to the guy, you can use it now. He just says to the guy, you can use it now. That means I'm no longer responsible. It's yours. Make sure you cover it when you leave. The other one says, that's not enough. According to many of the Shem, Dilly means a pail. If he gives him over the bucket and says, okay, now you draw water, that's more than just saying it. It means I'm handing over responsibility. But Rashi, interestingly, and before you try to understand what force Rashi, he comes up with a new translation of the word dilya. Dli, we know, is an emet, a bucket, a pail. Rashi translates dilya is the lid of the boy. He gave him the actual lid of the boy and he said, here, make sure you cover it. That's when the first guy's no longer responsible. If he did not physically hand over the lid of the boy to the second guy, then the first guy is still responsible because he's the one who removed the lid in the first place. Says the Gemara, it seems somebody's drawing water from the boy. My friend came along. Why don't you let me? Let me come over and take some water as well. When I just want to take some water. As soon as this first guy stepped aside, the second guy, you can take over. The first guy discharges responsibility, and he's no longer responsible. Rabbi Yaakov says, says only when you gave over the lid. Clear, it's the same machlekes. The Ma'ikah, so what's the crux of the argument? Rabbi Yaakov says, and we're talking about two partners here. Rabbi Yaakov says, Yesh Breda. Rabbi Yaakov says that every time you use the two partners in a well, when I use the water, we'll say all along this was my water. All along was my water. And so there's Yesh Breda. There is Breda. So I don't have to go to my partner's water. I'm not taking his water. I'm only taking my water. It's completely mine. So therefore, we're still partners. And if an animal got damaged, we're both responsible. But if you gave me over the lid, okay, not just you gave me permission to take water. If you gave me permission to take water, I'm not taking your water. I'm taking my own water. So your water is still your water. You didn't cover, that part of the water. So we're both responsible. If you gave me the lid, you're telling me clearly you take over responsibility. Okay. But each one's taking their own water. And therefore, I have nothing to do with your half, you have nothing to do with my half, and they were both responsible. The Rabbanan hold ain't Breda. The Rabbanan holds no Breda. By saying that there's no Breda, so therefore when I'm taking water from the bird, I might be taking your water. So I am borrowing your side of the boiler so that I can use it for myself. So since I'm borrowing it, you're no longer involved. I'm now 100% responsible for the buyer. The moment you said you stepped aside, here, take the water. Could be I'm using your water because no brera. We don't say, oh, retrospectively that this is my water. So there's no brera here. So how can I take your water? I had to borrow it from you. So I'm now I own half, and the other half I'm borrowing. So now I am 100% responsible for this buyer. So the moment you step aside, I take over responsibility. Where do you find the silver machlekes? We had in the Dorim. Now we learned Hashutvin Shenodra Nozem is that two partners hate each other's guts, and they made a neder. Each one vowed, you should not walk onto my side, on my side of the partnership. So the din is Asur L'Chon L'Chatzah. Tanna Kama says you can't walk into the chatzah because we don't know which side. Even on my side, right next to me, maybe it's your property. But Ablez Ben Yaakov says Zen Nichnes L'Torch Shaloi, Zen Nichnes L'Torch Shaloi. Each one can walk on their side. Why? Mike, if you're Ablez Ben Yaakov, hold Yesh Breda. He says that if I'm walking, I have permission for 50%. So I'm walking means all along that is my share. Higher than Nafshe, I have a Nafshe. Each one's going on their own side. So therefore I can walk wherever I want to walk. The Rabban hold Ein Breda. So I might be walking on your side. If I sell a pit to my friend, the moment, now that we mentioned about a lid, the moment you gave the lid to your friend, he was kaina. The moment you gave him the lid, that is sort of a kinyan. I'm selling you a pit. The moment I gave you the lid of the pit, it's yours. So I don't understand what kind of kinyan is that? But the guy paid for it. The money is the kinyan. That's the acquisition. That you have to repair things. You have to repair. But what is the lid? When I say you're right. He has to repair the whole. But when you make a kinyan, the owner, have to say to you, go ahead and make a kinyan. By me giving the lid, it's tantamount to me saying, go ahead and make a kinyan. I gave you the lid. As if I told you, go and be kind. We'll continue tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem. Have a good walk, everybody. Good